Welcome, Dr. Di Sanchez and students of the Emerging Issues in Human Resource Training class at Amberton University. My name is Erica Reber, and today I will be presenting my graduate project entitled Cross-Cultural Training in the Age of Globalization. Topics I will be discussing during this presentation are as follows: Introduction, including my hypothesis statement, a literature review, study limitations and suggestions, methodology, my findings, recommendations for the future, conclusions, and finally, I will cite my sources. We live in an ever-expanding global economy, and it's important that all businesses are equipped to deal with this challenging landscape. Technology has made it easier than ever before for businesses to expand into a global market. The internet, email, social networking, video conferencing are all just a few of the new technologies that have created opportunities for all types of businesses to compete in global markets. Companies are now able to close international deals and expand operations across the world instantly, with very little overhead cost. In this increasingly interconnected world, there was nearly $30 trillion worth of goods and services traded in 2013 alone. Managers, for good reason, are optimistic about globalization. Globalization opens the door for a great deal of company growth and profitability. The benefits of globalization in business are undeniable. However, with it comes new obstacles and new challenges. Many companies often underestimate the importance of being prepared for globalization's challenges, which can lead to failure in the global market. There are many factors that can affect the outcome of a business's efforts in globalization. However, the most difficult to understand and the one most often neglected by managers can be culture. Current business models do not always translate into other countries. An example of this is the grocery store retailer based in the United Kingdom, Tesco. Tesco is one of the largest grocery retailers in the world. However, recently, it failed in its expansion attempts into the United States. This was largely because of its insufficient understanding of the U.S. consumer market. It positioned itself between typical U.S. convenience stores and local supermarket chains, hoping to appeal to what it perceived as an underserved middle market. It wanted to provide a wider selection of staple products than convenience stores and yet have more convenience and speed than supermarkets. It also offered a mix of products between high-end store products and mass-market store products. Unfortunately, instead of appealing to an underserved market, Tesco got stuck in the middle. It offered neither enough variety to draw customers away from convenience stores, nor adequate gains in convenience to draw customers away from supermarkets. Management was overconfident about its business model and the benefits of imposing what it knew about English customers onto the market in the United States. Because of globalization, companies based in the United States often place their U.S. managers in charge of global operations. The globalization of businesses requires managers to be able to communicate, negotiate, and collaborate across different cultures. These managers may lack the cultural knowledge and understanding needed to successfully do their jobs. This is well known, and employers have long sought employees with cross-cultural capabilities. However, it is very important that companies provide their managers and their employees with cross-cultural trainings in order for them to understand overseas markets, manage employees with different cultures than themselves, and to successfully work together as co-workers. These cross-cultural trainings should be able to help employee relations and should also include diverse training programs. Managers throughout the world report that when making work-related decisions, they rely heavily on their own judgment, which is shaped by their past experience and their training. Cultures differ in many areas, and it's important for employees and managers to understand this. Here are some ways that cultures can differ. First, survival, or the emergence of social institutions. This refers to how people interact. The cultural norms of many people and cultures originated many years ago and were based on determining whether someone was friendly or hostile. In other words, the intent of a newcomer. For instance, even shaking hands in Western cultures was initially an indication of having no weapon. Another example of a cultural norm based on this was the Maori of New Zealand. They would press noses as a sign of peace. Another way cultures can differ is by language. Language plays a very prominent role in the way cultural characteristics have spread throughout the world. There have been studies that suggest that some features of language are related to how people view the world. For instance, it has been shown that speakers of languages based on pictorial representations, like Chinese characters, see the world more holistically than people whose languages are based on phonetic scripts, like English. Because we use language to interact with each other, it plays a powerful role in shaping behavior and in perpetuating beliefs and habitual patterns in interaction. Third, religion and ideology. Religious traditions are closely related to cultural values. They can have a cultural influence through the content of their belief system. Religious groups have long competed with nation-states as a basis for social identities. Religion is a key factor in almost all aspects of culture. Other factors include things like climate, economy, and topography. These things can affect the exchange of culture among societies because of barriers like mountains and oceans. Technology can also affect the exchange between cultures and transfer of culture as well as political boundaries. It is important not only to be aware of these differences between cultures, but also to understand their origins, as the more we are able to understand about different cultures, the more we are able to accept their differences. This table shows the approximate geographic distribution of major religions around the world. It was adapted from information gathered from the Pew Research Center. As you can see, religions vary greatly throughout the world, and even throughout a region. And though Christianity is the most widely practiced, the margins of this are quite small. And in places like the Middle East and Asia Pacific, the percentage of people who identify as Christian is very small. Another percentage to note is the rising number of people who consider themselves as unaffiliated. It was up to 16% according to this data gathered in 2012. I'm sure the number continues to rise today. Because religions are such an important determiner of culture, it is extremely important for managers and employees of global businesses to understand prominent regional religions and the cultures associated with them. Throughout this research, I predicted that companies who implement robust and complete cross-cultural training programs amongst their employees, and specifically their managers, will be more successful. Globalization is an important topic in business, and because of this, there have been numerous studies done and a great deal of research on the subject has been conducted. It is imperative, however, that this type of scholarly work is continued so that management across cultures can continue to improve. The Society for Human Resource Management, or SHRM, published a research report titled Employee Job Satisfaction and Engagement, Revitalizing a Changing Workforce, in which they surveyed 600 U.S. employees in November and December of 2015. The purpose of this annual study is to identify factors that influence overall employee satisfaction and engagement in the workplace. The information from this study can help provide insight on employee preferences and highlight key areas for organizations to consider as they develop trainings. As predicted, SHRM discovered that the vast majority of employees find trust, respect, and relationships to be very important in determining their job satisfaction. This is important when looking at cross-cultural training, as it is hard to build relationships if there is not an understanding of cultural differences. Another study I looked at was by Marilyn Armour and her colleagues, who conducted a diversity training study in 2004 that focused on enhancing social work instructors' cultural competence. Though it is not a direct comparison to all managers, the relationships studied can be easily compared to manager-employee relationships, as instructors also acted as supervisors. In this study, 11 field instructors were studied which targeted their behavior in 3 domains: relationship with self, with the person being supervised, and with the agency. Also, the questionnaire was administered at 3 different points: pre-training, post-training, and at a 6-month follow-up. It was found in this study that those being supervised had, quote, disturbing experiences when they experienced moments of unacceptable biases and beliefs. The training used increased supervisor skills to help promote awareness of diverse feelings, among other things, and the participants expressed that after the training they were more knowledgeable and empowered to address diversity. Participants listed facing up to issues, bringing up cultural differences, reading and continued training, and bringing problems to supervisors or program managers as actions they could realistically take to increase the cultural competence of their agencies. Past research has shown that success in intercultural communication is correlated with mindfulness and self-awareness about cultural assumptions. Jean Johnson and her colleagues conducted a study published in the Journal of International Business Studies titled "Setting the Stage for Trust and Strategic Integration in U.S.-Japanese Cooperative Alliances." This study investigated the formation and outcomes of trust between partners in the non-equity-based International Cooperative Alliance. Data was gathered from Japanese and U.S. partners from 101 members in Japan. Results showed that partner cultural sensitivity is an important contributor to trust building for both sides. This research suggests that self-awareness and sensitivity towards others is a key element to succeeding in a cross-cultural environment. The ability to think flexibly about issues and see things through a different cultural perspective is key. Thus, cultural perspective taking is an important part of cross-cultural training. Perspective taking is defined as imagining the world from another person's perspective. By doing this, one can decrease biases and stereotyping and can help people see themselves as similar to others, helping with coordination and coordinating with people that are different from themselves. Moore and his colleagues conducted a study entitled "Identifying and Training Adaptive Cross-Cultural Management Skills: The Crucial Role of Cultural Metacognition," in which they attempted to discover more about the social cognitive mechanisms that facilitate the performance of individuals who score highly on cultural metacognition. Cultural metacognition refers to an individual's level of conscious cultural awareness and executive processing during a cross-cultural interaction. The study researched graduate students and found that during intercultural interactions, when both parties participated in reflection and cultural training, having them simply think about the counterparts' cultural differences prior to the intercultural interactions, the two were much more successful in coming together and they found that they had overlapping values and goals. Also, by increasing cultural intelligence, it improved intercultural relationships. Simply being aware of a different culture's counterparts, values, and beliefs can facilitate intercultural cooperation associated with cross-cultural managerial performance. In a paper published by the University of Hawaii entitled Cross-Cultural Training, a Review, Don Barwak and Richard Brislin study past research of cross-cultural training and make some excellent points about cross-cultural training. One of the most common formats for conducting cross-cultural training programs includes a brief lecture that provides basic information about the history and the socio-economic situation of the target culture. This type of training has some problems. First, this type of training does not adjust for individual differences in capability across certain behavioral skills. Second, the training fails to consider the nature of the target culture and the work to be performed in terms of intensity, duration, and nature. And third, the knowledge provided to managers in cultural-specific training programs is not transferable across cultural domains. What is more important than simply providing employees with information about the target culture is to both provide them with in-depth analysis of cultural differences and also to work on developing metacognitive skills. Cross-cultural management training can enhance cultural intelligence. They should work on developing habits of awareness associated with high levels of cultural metacognition by establishing common goals and roles and consensual norms of conduct. As far as the negotiation skills, it is important to match the counterparts' negotiational strategies, which will increase chances of a positive outcome during negotiation. General perspective taking aids in negotiation. Though useful, there are some study limitations to the studies that I just mentioned. In the first study, conducted by SHRM, only 600 employees participated. This makes it difficult to generalize to all employees. In addition, all the participants in the survey were employees of the United States, which makes the findings rather specific and uncertain if the same is true in other countries or cultures. It would be interesting to know how many different career fields were used to find the participants, and in future studies it would be helpful to get a larger sample size. In the study conducted by RMR and her colleagues, there was an even smaller sample size used to draw information from. Only 11 people were studied. Also, these 11 people were part of the social work field, and though inferences can be made among other manager-type positions, it is a very narrow field of study. This study was also conducted in 2004, so the findings are not extremely current. Finally, much of the results from this study were gathered through self-reports. There will always be differences between self-reports and observed data, and though the reports of how each subject felt were likely fairly accurate, in future research I would suggest a similar study to be completed using observed interactions rather than self-report of the success of the cultural interactions. In the third listed study by Johnson and her colleagues, the intercultural interactions were studied only by Americans and their interactions with their Japanese counterparts. Though this is more informative than many other studies because two different cultural interactions were assessed, a wider variety of cultures used would yield better results. Finally, in the study conducted by Moore and his colleagues, graduate students were the participants. This can be a weakness because they may not have as much work or cultural experiences as other people working for globalized companies, though they do have more experience than undergraduates. Most of the studies compiled on the subject of cultural awareness and success are based on games and simulated scenarios instead of real-life interactions. I think that these studies could benefit from more real-life interactions. I was interested in whether I would be able to compare the success of companies that have a large global presence based on whether they have an in-depth cross-cultural training program and whether that program includes a diversity program. I chose to focus on the airline industry as they rely heavily on cross-cultural interactions, and they have been globalizing at an extremely fast rate. In order to compare the success of airline companies with their cross-cultural training, I decided to use empirical analysis of data I collected as from as many sources as possible. I made it as qualitative as possible as I looked into the extent companies use these training programs and how they use quality, cultural, and diversity training programs. I gathered as much information as I could on specific companies and their cultural training programs and compared that with their success in employee satisfaction, customer satisfaction, and overall company success. I chose the airline industry because, as Doug Parker, the CEO of American Airlines, describes, it is an industry that is unique in its mix of technical expertise, customer service focus, and workforce diversity. We operate highly complex products that get more complex with every generation, to move people and products around the globe and to have to cater to many different customer bases. We interact with flight crews, flight service, marketing, corporate OEMs, regulatory government agencies, all of which require a different approach and provide a different viewpoint on our work product. There are not many professions where the diversity of the experience is this broad. With the advanced technology in today's modern aircraft, emphasis on specialized training and experience is paramount. I looked into the 4 largest major traditional carriers and did not include any of the low-cost carriers. The 4 I chose were Delta Airlines, Alaska Airlines, American Airlines, and United Airlines. All 4 of these airlines are extremely successful. This slide shows the market value of each of these airlines in the billions. Delta holds the largest market value at $37.1 billion in 2016. United Airlines market value was $25.3 billion. American Airlines was $23.1 billion, and Alaska's was $9 billion in 2016. I pulled data of overall customer satisfaction from the J.D. Power 2016 North American Airlines Satisfaction Study. As you can see, Alaska received the highest customer satisfaction rating, 5 of 5 stars. Delta Airlines had 4 of 5 stars. American Airlines had 3 of 5 stars. And United Airlines had 2 of 5 stars. Delta rated far and away the best in employee satisfaction, with 4.2 out of 5 stars on Glassdoor.com. United was next with 3.8 stars, then Alaska Airlines with 3.7 stars, and finally American Airlines with 3.6 stars. In addition, Delta was on the Forbes list of 50 best places to work in 2017, and it won the Glassdoor Employee Choice Award for Best Places to Work in 2016. It also ranked second on the list of 50 best places for diversity in 2016 by GreatPlaceToWork.com. Those awards were not specific to the airline industry, which shows how successful Delta has been when it comes to employee satisfaction. Overall, taking all 3 of these categories into account, Delta was the most successful. It ranked highest for employee satisfaction, market value, and was second in consumer satisfaction. When researching these 4 airlines, cross-cultural and diversity training, they all seemed to put a high importance on cultural and diversity training. However, it was clear that Delta made it one of their top priorities. Though through research I was unable to qualitatively link company success with cross-cultural and diversity training programs due to a lack of qualitative data, it is clear from past research that training makes a big difference in the ability of managers and employees to succeed in an ever-globalizing business atmosphere. Though there has been much research and many studies on the subject of cross-cultural training, it is very important for this type of research to continue. It is imperative that information gathered be current. Keeping current on the helpfulness of cross-cultural training on global companies is important as the landscape is ever-changing due to technology. In addition, more information should be gathered on the most effective ways to implement these training programs so managers and employees can access and have a higher chance of success. Keeping in mind that small companies are just as important as large ones in the world of business globalization, and studies should be conducted to include these as well, as globalization is common not just in large companies, but in small ones. In conclusion, I would like to say that technology has led to rapid change in business and mass globalization. Globalization is affecting the environments in which managers must function. Today's global managers face a business environment that is more complex, diverse, uncertain, and competitive than ever before, though also more profitable. However, it is the influence of culture on management that can be the most difficult to deal with because it affects almost every aspect of business. Decision-making roles of global managers is extremely important, and it is therefore vital that managers are properly trained in cross-cultural areas. Information starts at the top, and managers are able to set the stage for employees that they are managing. They can pass down their cultural knowledge to employees who are then able to properly interact with customers and/or clients. Please view the next 2 pages as the sources used in this study. This concludes my research project labeled Cross-Cultural Training in the Age of Globalization.